The Nikon Z9 is always being continuously improved through firmware, and this time we have a new firmware update of firmware version 5.1. 5.1 will bring with it lots of new features that are mainly based around video, one of which I've been waiting for a really long time, and I'm really excited to say that we have the ability to now use shutter angle when it comes to shooting video in a Z9. There's also lots of other smaller features that improve the day-to-day use of the Z9 when using it for video, and I'd love to talk you through them today. What is shutter angle? Well, it's a completely different way of changing your shutter speed, and it's a way that might be new to photographers, but it's definitely been around a long time for those of you that shoot video. So if you've shot video on a Z9 before, you're used to the traditional method of changing your shutter speed, where you choose a 50th of a second or a 100th of a second, and you're changing that shutter speed with the rear dial normally. With shutter angle though, it allows you to lock your shutter speed to your frame rate. Now this is particularly useful when you're changing frame rate. Let's say you go from 50 frames per second to 100 frames per second. Normally you would have to make sure that your shutter speed is adjusted accordingly, but shutter angle locks that together, meaning that you're always at the right shutter speed for the frame rate that you're shooting at. This is particularly useful if you're using it for things like slow motion, or if you want to add motion blur into your shot. I'd love to show you some examples of how this works and what it looks like, because it is a really important feature. So let's take a look at some different shutter angles to show you how it affects motion in video. Let's start with 45 degrees. And as you can see with the movement of my hand, it makes it look very jittery with very little motion blur. As we move on to a shutter angle of 90 degrees, we're starting to add in more motion. When we get onto a shutter angle of 180 degrees, we can really start to see that motion coming into our video. And this is where we'll see that natural level of motion blur. When we then push on to 360 degrees, this will make sure that your shutter speed is equal to that of your frame rate. This will give you lots of motion blur, especially if you've got a very fast moving subject, and that might actually give you too much motion blur depending on what you're recording. Another really good example of using different shutter angles is someone juggling. As we change that shutter angle, we can increase the level of motion blur in our video and allowing us the creative choice for the look that we want. If shutter angle is something that you want to try on your Z9, it's very easy to do. All you need to do is head to your custom settings menu, then head to the video section and look for an option that says shutter mode. This will allow you to change from shutter speed to shutter angle. The Waveform Monitor on the Nikon Z9 is now much more customizable. You can customize how transparent it is, and you can also customize its location on the display. You can still adjust the size of the Waveform Monitor, but you now have the ability, when the Waveform Monitor is set to small, to adjust the placement. You can have it in the top right or top left of your frame, and also in the bottom left or bottom right of your frame, making sure that it doesn't cover your subject when recording. And also you can now adjust the transparency of the Waveform Monitor, meaning that the monitor itself does not block the subject. This is particularly useful when using the Waveform Monitor set to large, meaning you can still see the subject through the monitor and it's not a distracting aspect, but you can still make sure that your exposure is correct across the frame. There's also a new customization option for zebra patterns. You can now adjust the color of the zebra pattern, showing you the highlight on the back of your camera. You still have the traditional black and white, but you can also now choose from grey, red, green, or blue. This is particularly useful if you want to use a colour that contrasts with your scene and subject. There's also an additional feature that's been added into firmware version 5.1, and this feature allows you to combine power zoom and high-res zoom together. Now, this feature does work with the new 28 to 135mm f4 power zoom lens, but that lens is still currently under development. So when you combine that lens with the Z9 in the future, you'll be able to make use of that combination of power zoom and high-res zoom. There's two options as to how it works. First of all, it lets you extend the zoom range by using the power zoom first and then jumping into high-res zoom nice and smoothly. Or you can sync them both together, so it makes use of power zoom and high-res zoom at the same time. So hopefully this quick look at some of the new additions in firmware version 5.1 has been useful. There's some new features in there that are going to be incredibly useful for people who use their Z9 for video, and there's some new features that stills photographers might want to start learning about, like shutter angle, for example. It's a feature that I've been asking for a really long time, and I'm really excited it's finally here in the Z9, and I'm really excited to go and shoot some video and make use of some of the new features that we've talked about.